I remember a while ago when DJI released their Mavic 3 and Mavic 3 Cine, the specs on that thing were just mind-blowing. The fact that you could fit all of that into such a small thing. And, you know, I was looking to upgrade from this, my Mavic 2 Pro, which had really done me well. And when I saw that, it was like, great, finally a drone that will do that. And then we got to one major point. The price. The price, well, basically made it a non-starter for a lot of people, including me. But now we have something different, the Mavic 3 Classic. And this is the prime example of, I think, DJI listening to its customers and realizing that they wanted something specific and that the Mavic 3 wasn't exactly the answer. So now I think we have it. And if you have something like the Mavic 2 Pro, well, this finally might be the reason to upgrade. DJI has been on a tear lately with a lot of their new products. I've talked about them here on the channel and they're pretty great. But for someone that does videography or video production for a living, some of those, I guess you'd say, entry-level drones, like the Mini 3, the Mini 3 Pro, they have a lot of great features built in and they're the perfect drone for most people. But for someone like me, I've always wanted just a little bit more out of this system. And that's why I've kept around my Mavic 2 Pro and hadn't seen a reason to get rid of it or stop using it because I really liked the image that I got out of it. But even still, with this, there are things about it that are just showing its age that I know newer products can do better, and that's where we get to the Mavic 3 Classic. Now, a product like this, I think, comes down to three main things, and if you need these, well, this is the drone for you. And I think the first one is the camera system. Do you want the best quality you can get in a form factor like this? The second is the flight time and the flying abilities, and then the third was, well, the price. And in those 3 points, you get a noticeably different and better system than something like the Mavic 2 Pro. And it straddles that line perfectly between price and features. Now, let's just talk about the price real quick because I think this is the main reason a lot of people will choose this over something like the regular Mavic 3 or the Mavic 3 Cine. Mavic 3 Classic comes in around $1,500 and there's a few different options you can choose. You can get just the drone, which is at that $1,500 price, or you can get the drone with a controller for around $1,600, or you could do what I think is the best option, which is pay just a little bit more, so around $1,800, and you can get the DJI RC. This is probably one of my favorite upgrades over other drones, is having a controller with the screen built in, so I don't have to connect my phone. I don't have to, do some kind of origami with the controller. This is all ready to go and I can control the drone, see everything right on the screen that's built in. It's a little bit more extra money, but totally worth it. And that's basically the same price as the Mavic 2 Pro that came before it. So if you're already in that range of what you're willing to spend, well, it's a no-brainer. Now the price is all well and fine, but what are you getting for that price? Well, I've talked about this many times in all my other drone videos, but for me, and especially with the Mavic 3 Classic, these are flying cameras. I want to get the best images I possibly can. And I think that's really where the Mavic 3 Classic excels. And it's really the main reason, in my opinion, why you should buy this. If you're doing any sort of professional work or any sort of videography work on a regular basis, having a good camera that is easy to edit, easy to color correct, just takes a lot of weight off of your shoulders. You know you're going to get a decent image right out of the camera and you can manipulate it however you want. And in past drone cameras, I've gotten amazing shots. So it's not like you can't do it with lesser cameras. It's just about making your life easier. For instance, the Mavic 2 Pro, this has been my tried and true drone for anything quasi-professional or just things that I really care about the image quality. And I've gotten some amazing shots out of it. But I always felt I was battling what the camera was capable of in certain situations. Because, for instance, with the Mavic 2 Pro, you have a 1-inch sensor and the optics built in, which at the time was great and something we never really had before. But you could feel both of those have their limitations. Whereas now with the Mavic 3 Classic, we have a micro four thirds sensor built in. This is, it's a big deal. This makes the sensor no longer the bottleneck of what the camera can do. Now you're really just relying on the optics that are paired with that sensor. Now with this, you get up to 5.1K recording at up to 50 frames per second. Then you get all your variations of 4K and 1080p, all that down below. And you get one of my favorite features, which is the 10-bit D-Log recording. So this is your flat profile that gives you a lot of dynamic range and a lot of versatility in color grading. I'm someone who really loves to do color correction and color grading. And I always wanted to get the maximum possible, dynamic range, resolution, everything out of my camera. And having this built in is really nice. Now this camera is actually exactly the same as what you get with the higher end Mavic 3, the regular. And I actually used that a few months back on a project with the Rivian R1T. We were out in the desert shooting and, making a video for this. I'll leave that video down below. It's on the John Rettinger channel. But I used the Mavic 3 for that shoot, and I was incredibly impressed with what the footage looked like. Again, this is the exact same camera. So these results that I got there, you can also get here. And you can see when I go from the flat profile to the color graded profile, there's just so much color detail, so much range that you can do, so many corrections that you can do. do. And like I said up front, this makes the drone look like it's something a little higher end, like you're almost using a regular camera up in the air rather than one of these really small cameras. That sensor, it's putting in work. But I think one of the bigger questions is, can you actually notice a difference in this footage compared to the older drones, specifically the Mavic 2 Pro? Now, yes, I can notice a difference when I'm, editing on my computer, but will anyone who's actually watching this footage notice? And I think in certain scenarios, like really well-lit situations, the difference isn't all that noticeable. But when you get into the less ideal situations, like low light and more high dynamic range situations, this is where you see a real noticeable difference. So for instance, this shot, you can see it's pointing directly at the sun, and the Mavic 3 Classic, you can see just a circle where the sun is, whereas the Mavic 2 Pro, you can kind of see more of a gradation where the highlights are blown out. And I think here is where you can notice there's just no competition. This is noticeably better, and it's just something you can't really get with something like the Mavic 2 Pro. One of the things that's impressed me most about the Mavic 3 series, Mavic 3 Classic included, is the flight time. 46 minutes off of one single battery. Now, of course, that is the ideal maximum flight time, so you're probably not actually going to get that, but you're getting more closer to, 40 minutes depending on how you're flying. And that is, it's just a ton. That is a long time to be flying up in the air, and it gives you more than enough time to get all the shots that you need. Before having this kind of battery life, I'd have to specifically choose which kind of shots do I need and where am I going to shoot them, have them perfectly planned out, go get them, come back, swap batteries, do that same thing over and over. Whereas now, I still do that for efficiency's sake, but I can just throw the drone up, look around, see what might look good, and just experiment a little bit more. I think that for me is what the flight time really achieves, is the ability to experiment while up in the air. I don't have to constantly be thinking that I gotta get the shots and get back down. And really, for most situations, you can get away with just having one battery, and if you have two, you're good to go. For me, anytime I go out, I'm always carrying one of these big batteries with me so I can recharge everything as I'm on the go. And if I fly with one, it dies, and then I plug it in and fly with the other, and I'm just constantly able to go. And having that long flight time doesn't mean they reduced anything else. In fact, they made everything better. So this is using DJI's 03 Plus transmission, which means you can go up to 15 kilometers, whereas on the Mavic 2 Pro, you can only go to 10. And that is sending you back on your controller a 1080p 60 live feed, and you can go a really long ways to do that. For instance, this shot, I was sitting in a parking lot and I flew a really long ways away to get the shot that I needed, and there was no issues with the feed cutting out. Plus, you still get all the other smart features, so you have things like Active Track 5.0 built in, which I love and I use all the time, since most of the time I'm flying by myself. You also get master shots, quick shots, all of those smart features are built in here. Plus, it has omnidirectional sensing, so you hopefully won't ever crash it because it can actually see the world around it. So I think any way you slice it, this is the drone to get if you want the best camera, you want great flight time and reliability in the air, and you don't want to break the bank while doing it, this is the way to go. And if you are looking to upgrade from something that you've had before, well, I think now you have a reason to actually do it, and you're going to be happy with that purchase. And most of all, I'm just happy that DJI seemed to listen to its customers who wanted the Mavic 3, but just couldn't justify spending that extra money on it. And now they have a really solid option that gives them the same basic features and quality, but they can justify actually buying.